Hey guys, welcome to Admissions Roadmap MBA Success Stories. Our mission here is to help Indians get into top business schools around the world. And to do that, we bring on successful applicants who've gone on to top business schools and are willing to come and teach on this platform. But today's guest has not only gone to some of the best business schools, and in a take two of this introduction, let me tell you, he's done something so unique in funding his MBA that it was the first ever in this industry that I'm aware of. Welcome to the program, Giant.
Thanks, Ashwin, for having me. For everyone who is watching this, you have no idea how long this took to make it. I would say almost a year, if I'm not wrong.
It has taken a long time. You contacted me several years ago, 5-6 years ago, when you initially wanted to do your MBA, just after I graduated from Ross. Since then, you've gone on to graduate from Oxford Side School of Business. But let me do an introduction. And yes, we've taken a year. It's taken a year to get us to a point where we've been able to do this show. But by introduction, you graduated from University of Madras. I'm looking at your LinkedIn with a bachelor's in business administration, a first class distinction, an honor that I don't have. You worked largely in finance, but in a unique space of finance. It seemed like you worked in impact investing in the early part of your career, which is an unconventional career for somebody in India. You've gone on to Oxford, graduated in 2017 with an MBA, and have continued to work in some of the best impact investing funds, Grameen being the pioneer in the space, if you may.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting journey. So I finished undergraduate degree in 2009. So this is right after the financial crisis. So you can imagine that things were really bad and people didn't really know what they wanted to do. And I was probably quite naive and pretty ignorant about the work. So I think anyone who was studying with me, we only had 4 options: get into marketing, HR, finance, or management. I think those are the only 4 options available. And there were a few of us who were thinking about what else could we do? Is there anything else beyond these 4 functions? And aside from a CA or a CWA or any of these professional degrees that we could do. So of course, the first job that I got into was a startup. I did have an offer from a larger firm, a corporate firm, something which my mom tells me even today, you could have probably taken that. But it was a good decision. That was my kind of entry into the world of startups. So where I come from, I'm from Chennai, probably something for everyone. It's probably not as forward in finance or startups as a Mumbai or a Bangalore, but we do have a system of our ecosystem of our own. So that was my entry into the space. And I guess the transition into impact investing was natural. It just happened, or it had to happen, because the work that I was doing at Venture Intelligence, the first firm that I joined, was essentially tracking the private equity and venture capital kind of ecosystem in India in terms of deals, who's putting money where, who's getting funded. Here's an interesting stat. When I was working for that company, Flipkart was valued less than 50 million USD. And right now they're a unicorn. And the founders are investing in all sorts of companies on their own. So it's been a long journey for the Indian startup and venture capital ecosystem. And impact investing was just picking up after the whole microfinance kind of boom. And I just wanted to use finance in a career where it actually meant something. So that was essentially kind of my entry into impact. I can obviously talk about the steps to get into impact investing, which is probably like a different webinar altogether. But it's been an interesting journey, and I think one of the key reasons why I chose Oxford as well, which I'm guessing you're going to ask at some point in terms of why.
Yeah, I want to focus on that, but I also want to say that you were always interested in finance. You went on to do a diploma in financial management from Loyola as well. Again, scoring first class distinction, so we can see the academic pedigree in what you did.
Like to differ.
But. Let's talk about the fact that you did your diploma in 2012. You were continuing to work after that within the venture capital space, largely within that, the impact investing space.
Sure.
What was the motivation at that point to want to do an MBA?
I think going back to when I first reached out to you, this was after my 2 years at Venture Intelligence. Right after 2011, I had a choice. What did I want to do next? Should I pursue VC as a career, which is anyway very difficult to kind of break into, or should I probably consider studying further? At which point, I was thinking maybe should I do the MBA or should I not do the MBA? Should I do an MIM or a master's in finance, like a slightly less heavy kind of course? But I think the interesting thing is I've always looked at the MBA as something that I would do at some point. I just did not know when. So I think the choice, or really the decision to kind of think about the MBA at that point was, and the reasons why I didn't do them was because, I think a lot of the feedback that I got, maybe even from you, is what value do you bring to the classroom? I think as a young professional, there's more for me to gain, probably not much for me to add in terms of, reciprocation. And I think it became clear to me that the space that I was in and the position that I was in, if I tried a little bit harder, I could be in a place for a fair bit amount of time, then probably consider the MBA, which would probably make much better sense, which is exactly what happened. I don't know if that kind of answers your question.
How many years did you work before you finally embarked on your MBA?
5 years to be exact. So 2 years with the first firm, 3 years with the second firm. I had about kind of a gap year where I was doing the diploma and I was volunteering with a couple of not-for-profits. But I would say 5 years. And I think that's probably the average work experience for an MBA applicant.
You volunteered while you were doing diploma with Teach for India. You were also a volunteer with the Indus Entrepreneurs, I think, the Chennai chapter of the Indus Entrepreneurs, or TIE.
That essentially kind of phase of discovery. I was telling you in terms of, there's two things: how I got into impact investing and why. The why part, it took me some time to figure out because finance was interesting, but I didn't want to be completely on the commercial side. So while I was, working at these not-for-profits or, lending my expertise and skills, I enjoyed helping people. I think that's been me as a person, but I wanted to do it in finance, and impact investing is the bridge to both.
The perfect bridge of that.
Exactly, and that's how it happened. But yeah, I think when I joined Oxford, I had about 5 years, 5 years of full-time experience and a lot of these outside of work in terms of volunteering. Volunteering in sense, physical volunteering, obviously in terms of with Teach for India, I was teaching English and math. But something which you're probably not saying is I was also volunteering on Catch a Fire. If you've not heard of that platform.
I don't know what that is.
You lend your skills on a project basis to not-for-profits, creating a business plan, preparing like a pitch deck. So it was a way for me to kind of engage with organizations who needed help and to see, if I could be useful. So I was doing all of that while, these things are happening as well.
The reason I wanted to talk, and what I mentioned in other interviews with other successful students, is a common thread that you do see is of the ones that do get in. They have a track record for many years. You went to business school in 2016. You were volunteering while you were studying further and working in impact investing in 2012, 2014. So you had a long track record of this, even if you haven't already during your undergrad. That track record of doing things that matter or things that you're interested in, even in the process of self-discovery, is an important step for students who want to showcase to schools that, hey, I am something more than just what my grades say, or I'm something more than just my work experience. So that's what I wanted to highlight there.
If I can add a quick point.
Yeah, please.
Right after my first workplace, when I was considering should I do the MBA in 2012 versus a couple of years later, this is feedback which I got from a lot of the MBA alumni and current students, including you. So the question was, what do you need to have when you get into the MBA? So what you're saying is exactly what I heard like 5-6 years ago. And it became clear to me that obviously it wasn't a conscious choice to build a profile for the MBA. Part of it is passion in terms of what you want to do. But I think just being aware in terms of where you want to be, especially if watching this and if they're pretty young in their kind of career and thinking I should probably do it now or later, that insight really helps. So you probably quickly identify what you don't have and, kind of work towards it. So that is probably like a useful kind of information for anyone.
Incidentally, the way you mentioned it, identifying what you don't have and work towards it and then go for the MBA, I'm working with a cohort of students who are just graduating either from IITs or just 1 year removed, 1 year beyond graduation and young in their careers. and I create a form of 10 students that I mentor to get to that path, to get to that career path 3 years. So it's interesting just to get that validation. But let's talk about the fact that you realize, okay, you wanted to do your MBA. I want to get into the process of how you identified which schools you wanted to get into. Let's talk about the research of the schools and how you ascertained that Oxford, the Said School of Business, was something that was the right fit for you.
Sure. Okay. We should probably dial back like 7-8 years.
Yes.
I told you, MBA is always on the cards. So
yeah.
Very first information session that I attended was of ISB's. School of Business, back in 2006, 2007. Okay. So I was in a room full of much older potentials, and I was probably in my second year of college. So I was already getting the sense that I did not belong there, or at least I need to do something to belong there.
Okay.
So I think the process of understanding and researching started way back then, just to get a sense in terms of the pedigree of the people who apply, or the kind of questions they ask. I was just sitting there, just observing people. So I think it started way back then. But really, I think the process for me, and maybe there's a process for everyone else, but I think for me, the most important point or aspect of doing that research was simply just talking to people like you and several other folks, and that's where the trove of information really is. You speak to alumni who've maybe graduated 10 years ago, 5 years ago, to get a sense in terms of where they've actually landed. And but even before that, obviously, if you have a great sense in terms of what career you want to do, then it's easier to choose your target schools. But if you don't, and if you're going by values, in the sense that I want to be part of a school which values diversity, or puts people in a particular sector, or someone who you look up who's actually studied there, that could be that way. So I'm skipping that part. I'm guessing you've spoken about it a lot with the other kind of candidates, and how do you choose the target schools?
Yeah, but let's talk about how you specifically chose it. If you can reflect back upon the schools that you were perhaps evaluating, we don't need to go into the schools that you chose not to go with, but rather the process that you said, okay, here's what I went through, and here's why Oxford seemed to be the right fit.
Sure. I'll get there probably in 2-3 minutes.
Okay.
So I think choice to do the MBA, the very first time when I looked at the MBA programs, I told you I was interested in finance and VC. So the first thing I did was, and at that point I was looking at business schools in the US predominantly. So what I did was I found this list or list of universities which had student-run venture capital funds. So that was my first, I think top of the list. University of Utah. I think Ross had a VC fund.
Yep.
Duke VC fund, and of course the Stanford, Harvard, Chicago, Booth, and all of that. So I think that was the first in terms of which business schools or universities actually had more practical kind of opportunities rather than just classroom alone. So I think that was very important for me. I think I learned more by doing than reading and probably listening. So that was probably a great filter. And I think once I had that, then I think the typical, in terms of rankings at that point, obviously rankings are like important, but in hindsight, probably not that much today.
Almost every business school student that comes on this program at the back end that I've gone to top universities say, you know what, at the end of it, ranking does not really matter as much as I thought when I was applying. It's just true.
I have to agree. I think it's just a sense that you get from your peers that ranking is like important, especially I guess being Indians, we place a lot of value on the optics. So that's obviously there. But I think that was there. Looked at the rankings, and I think dug deeper into what the university or the business school had to offer. If they were doing VC, what kind of investments, that's obviously one side. But aside from that, looking at interesting courses or modules. Like for instance, I was looking at Columbia, and Bruce Greenwald he's known for value investing course. And reached out to alumni who, if you're considering Columbia, those are the courses you should do, or these are the people you should meet, or these are the clubs that you should be part of. So I was really looking at the experience inside and beyond the business school. So that was there. So the very first round looked at the US schools back then, and more recently, 2015-16 onwards, started looking at UK and Europe. Because while I was in the impact investment space, I think I felt a strong need that the business school should have those core values, which I believe in my career. And I think straight off the bat, side business school was on the top of that list, especially in the UK. And even, I mean, UK and EU put together, because you have the school Center for Entrepreneurship. Then, of course, you have the broader University of Oxford, which is much more liberal in terms of the courses that are available. And I guess I just looked at the kind of people who graduated and were joining the school. A lot of social entrepreneurs, a lot of impact investors, a lot of people who are conscious about what impact their career should have. And that was the essence. About industries and sectors, I was just impressed with the pedigree of students who were like, you know what, it doesn't matter if I'm part of a corporate or a startup. My career should have some purpose. It should change people's life, or if I can be more, more audacious in terms of it should actually improve their lives even better. So I think that feedback was consistent. I've spoken to graduates who, studied in side business school 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5, and even recently, and they've all gone to a place where they have significant influence in the market, and that was impressive for me. Hardly didn't see that in a lot of the other schools that I had. Obviously, I've not studied in those business schools, so no disrespect to them. But just personally, I felt the connect, and really felt that vibe and energy, and that consistent messaging from the school, from the students, and even from the alumni. So that's how I would say I landed on that. But the interesting fact here is I did 2 rounds of applications. I did apply to US business schools once. I probably shouldn't have done that. I did that within 4 weeks because I missed the deadlines. Probably applying round 4 or round 5. So I just want to let's just apply and see where things go. That didn't work out so well. But I think after maybe 5-6 years, 2015, I realized I only had 1 year to do the MBA. So I didn't have 2 years. So the US was out. So there aren't many programs that are in the 1 year kind of category.
One of the qualifying criteria, of course, being Oxford is a 1-year MBA program. And we'll talk about the implications of a 1-year MBA program, the opportunities that it has, and some of the constraints that it lays upon people, especially when job hunting. That we'll talk about at the later part of it. If we can go back, and we spoke about this off air a few days ago. If you can go back to the MBA application journey itself, okay, and the essays. What were the essay questions that were asked of you during your Oxford application?
I think when I was applying, there was one main application or one main essay. I believe the question was, how do you fit with Oxford Side's mission? That was it. And
how do you fit with Oxford Side's mission?
Yeah. That's
okay.
It.
Okay, let's talk about the mission itself. What is the mission of the school?
I probably would have to read it out, but just if I were to condense in terms of what the school's mission is, just to create like transformation leaders who have world-changing impact. I think that's how I understood as the school's mission. Or broadly, that's what the school wants to do in terms of cultivating leaders or tomorrow's leaders who have that impact over the world, which is what I told you a few minutes back in terms of people.
Yes. How did you translate your essays and talk about it so that other students who are going to listen can actually understand how does one take their experiences and showcase that they fit with that mission? How did you do it?
I think if you look structurally at the question, what it really asks you is, who are you as a person? What have you done before that justifies what you want to do at the business school? And can you show a few examples to kind of back that up? I think that's really what is at the core of that question. But I think the thought process or really how I went about it is because I was in impact investing, maybe it was a bit easier to kind of speak to the essay because there have been essays in other business schools where it's a bit quirky, something like, tell me top 20 fun things that you would do, which I remember Duke had asked that same year.
Correct.
I think if I remember right. And that was very challenging, but I think with Oxford, the point was that I knew what I wanted to say. I didn't have to think a lot because the question really was asking in terms of what I believed in and how the Oxford mission kind of fits with my own values. So I'm a very values-based person, so it's easier to kind of speak on that front. But structurally, that's what it's trying to say. But the thought process behind it was that there are obviously you break down the mission in different parts. And I think one part is in terms of what value do you bring to the classroom or what changes you like to bring in either through your experiences. So if someone's worked, let's say, in India or any other emerging market and has done a lot of work in terms of philanthropy or more in terms of for-profits or startups or something of the sort, and it's had a visible impact on people, then you're able to basically bring that in, saying that Oxford or Site Business School believes in basically creating leaders in that space. So there's a direct connect in terms of what the school believes in versus or complementary to the work that you've done. So you just break that mission statement down into like different parts, try to see if you're actually able to relate it to the experiences, work or non-work, and just take it from there. And I think a part of the essay is also in terms of and I think this is pretty obvious in terms of there's a lot that you can get from the business school, but really what they want to understand is what you bring. And that's a standard question across every business school. But I think it's important to understand that because the school is so focused on people who at least have a faint sense in terms of what their career should mean or should do, I think they really want that to kind of shine through. So if you're using a cookie cutter approach in terms of using XYZ for different business schools, it would not fly. So I think partially it's about resonating with what the business school believes in and also being able to relate in terms of what you were doing before. I'll just pause there. Let me know if that makes sense to you.
What did you write as what you'd want to bring to the school?
I think, so what I had done before as part of the research process, again, I had sliced and diced what the business school was doing at that point. So essentially I had a sense in terms of what resources it had or what the students were doing. And I identified gaps in terms of where I thought I could add value, either through, I think one example I mentioned was creating an impact fund for the business school, which we actually did work on.
We'll come to that.
Sure. But I think, I think it's just in terms of identifying what the business school doesn't have or could have or should have, and how that relates to your experience again. I think word of caution here, do make sure that it relates to your experience. I can't say I want to start like a rocket ship center when you have no expertise in doing that. So it's good to be a dreamer, but be more realistic in terms of what you can actually bring on board. So
that's fair.
Fine balance.
This is, by the way, an extraordinary business lesson for people who want to start companies as well. You identified a gap in the market, in this case, gap in what perhaps Oxford is not doing or the Site School of Business is not doing. You identified what skills you have that you can help contribute to it. And you told this is what you can do and made it realistic and believable because you've done that in your professional career. It's a great business lesson if you think about it. And that's how you wrote your essay. And you executed upon it, which we will come to. What was the interview process like? Do you remember?
Yes, I do. It is quite nice. I think, straight out of the matter, it is a pleasant experience. I think I applied in round 2. So that was submitted in January 2017, and essentially got a call back or an email within a few weeks. And you might be happy. So there was a scheduling conflict for my interview. So I was in Chennai, and they basically said you can either do your interview through Skype or you could do it in Singapore. So those are the only options that are available. I think there was a option to do the interview in another city, but there was a date conflict. I was traveling outside of the country, and being the person I am, I love meeting people in person. So I said, I'm not going to do this through Skype. So I will come to Singapore. So I came to Singapore and met one of the directors of admissions, and we basically had everything. I think it was a smooth process. I was probably the first interviewee for the day, and what was supposed to be a 30-minute interview ended up being close to an hour. Essentially, the questions you're asking me in terms of challenging my motivations, or I think if I can add this, it is more about what I believed in than in terms of what I did. Obviously, I think you give examples in terms of real life examples in terms of your work, and outside of that. But really, I think what they're trying to understand is why do you care about what you do? So I think if you don't have to justify that if you already care about what you do, but if you probably have to think about if you're in a point in your career where you're a bit confused in terms of, is this what I want to do? I would say have the conviction to say that you want to switch industries or you want to explore something better. You want to work in a new geography. I would just say whatever it is, do care about what you want to do. I think open-ended answers or not having some clarity in terms of where you want to be. Obviously, they know that not everyone lands up where they want to be, but at least having this broader thought in terms of where you want to be, even like 12 months from now. I think that's really what they're going. But aside from that, it was a fairly, I mean, it was a great chat, I would say. It was a discussion rather than a one-to-one kind of interview.
As an MBA interviewer for Ross, I was an MBA interviewer for 4 years, and I managed a lot of the interviewing out of for the Singapore region and largely a lot of the Asia region. One of the pet peeves that I had was that if people were not very convinced about what the goal they're presenting. Conviction in what you're saying is extremely important. It gives me the confidence that you know it, and you won't go astray when you get into school, because it's very easy to get there. By the way, one thing I don't want to brush apart that you just mentioned, and it's a tactical measure.
Okay.
Going to a different country, meeting the person is a great sign of enthusiasm and interest in that school, that you want to do this. Everything is equal. I mean, most people will not care. You're not going to get scored any differently if you did it via Skype or not. But believe me, it will leave a lasting impression on a human if you've traveled and the first thing they ask is, oh, you traveled all the way from India to come do this. It matters. Second tactical measure. I, as an interviewer, used to always have a preference of people that would be the first on my card.
Okay.
Like 8 a.m., I would extend that a lot more, and I would have a more casual chat than, let's say, I have 6 interviews down where I'm tired and I want to get done with it. Okay, these are tactical measures, but I would always suggest please do that.
Yeah, no, I think I just got lucky with the first interviewee. But I think just going to the country, you're right, it was a conscious move. Because I think by the time I'd made up my mind, I think it was just a really good fit in terms of business scope. And I just didn't want to leave any avenues open for any kind of move away from an application decision. So I think that any smart applicant would want to do that. Also want to say if financially, if that's not possible, like you said, I still think it doesn't have a bearing on your decision, as long as they can through digitally in person in terms of what you believe in. Yeah. As long as they're able to do that, I think you should be fine.
As long as you're going to answer with conviction, even if you do so digitally, it should still be okay. Okay, good. Before we shift gears into the MBA itself and the culture at Oxford, do you remember the day when you got the admit from Oxford?
Oh, yeah.
What was that like?
Ironically, so me and my then girlfriend, now wife, we were in a theater. We were watching this movie called London Has Fallen, Gerard Butler's movie.
God, all right.
It was pretty ironical. So I think it was the climax where he saves the president and everything's great. And I get this email probably at 8 p.m. in the night. And you know how they talk about if you're delivering good news, deliver it. Don't delay the. And so the very first word that I saw was, "We are delighted."
Yeah. Okay.
So I knew that. And though the movie was not that great, I think the evening was by far the best that I remember it clearly. So yeah, I think it is something that I'd waited for like many, many years. And especially if you're someone who dreamt about, that particular moment, you visualized it in different forms, speaking to, a host of MBA applicants who've been there and done that and thinking about when will I actually be in that position. So that was special, definitely. So
if the first information session you attended was somewhere around 2007, a 9-year wait is really a long wait to envision. That's incredible. Okay, so then you joined Oxford. Let's talk about Oxford itself, and let's start with overall your experience from a cultural perspective. Here are some stats that Oxford proudly showcases, right? Over 60 nationalities in the school, perhaps throughout the university, maybe a lot more, I'm not sure. 93% of them internationals, 39% female, and it's a 330 odd class size, if I remember you telling me this. Now, it's quite diverse, that we know. But tell me, if you can, through examples, what you thought, what you think personifies the culture at Oxford Said School of Business.
Sure. I think one thing people don't realize, and even I did not realize until the day I arrived in Oxford, is that that there is Said Business School, and then there is the University of Oxford. But when you get to the place, that you're walking into a different world altogether. I think if you take the other business schools, they're all part of different universities. But I think it's just the experience is encapsulated in this massive university town. And the moment you step in, that you're going to be bombarded with ideas that you probably don't agree with or you have to adjust with. And your question was more in terms of diversity or
the culture itself. I know that Oxford is looking at when I was looking through and I was trying to research and I was trying to put myself in the mindset of an admissions member at Oxford, right? They're looking at, it's very clear on their site when it says, what is the school looking for? We're looking for people with a background in varied and multicultural environment, with exceptional maturity and outstanding leadership, who will make insightful contributions to your class. All of which you hinted to during your essays.
Yeah.
If you can take an ethos, if that's the ethos of Oxford, explain it through some examples where you've seen this, where you felt it viscerally.
Sure. So I think another stat, in terms of diversity, I know every business school, says that their class is diverse, and right.
Yep.
So, but I think taking it a bit further, and I think so. Obviously, Asians are everywhere, that we all know, Indians
yep.
and China. I think from a career standpoint, I did want to learn more about Africa. I have done some work there. I think an interesting stat there is 11% of the class is from Africa. And I think that's probably by far the highest that I've ever heard in the UK and EU. I'm not sure about the US, but that's one more point for you. So that's just a business school. University has different stats altogether. But if I can give you some examples. So from my class, we had 2 Olympians, 2 current or former Olympians. Of course, the university draws a lot of people who want to get into rowing and all sorts of sports. But my class, we had 1 or 2 Olympians. I'm pretty sure we had like 1 Olympian. He was almost 6'9". Crazy strong, super intelligent. But he had come there. And we had people who had worked in child trafficking, who had basically worked in organizations which are working against child trafficking. We had people who started social enterprises. We had people who had worked in war-stricken areas. We had people from the typical investment banking consulting world, and there are people like me who come from an impact investing sector. And then we had people who came from humanities, who read law, who had read literature before, who came with such diverse thoughts. If you go in with the sense that you know something than the others do, then you're in for a shock. I think that's the very first kind of feeling that I got in my first week, because the sense is it's a business school, so everyone's obviously going to only talk about business. That I was totally wrong. We had people who had worked with politicians. We had people who had done policy. We had people who had invented stuff. They had patents in their books. So I think what I learned straight off the bat was just to keep quiet, and just kind of listen to what people had to say. And I think that's one of the reasons why the university draws such kind of people, because while the larger University of Oxford brings together people who probably get into economics and philosophy and literature, even the business school has a small slice of that as well. And every day you kind of learn something. And I know this is probably pretty obvious again, but just in terms of learning through their experiences, what they're doing before, and every day you're kind of like talking for hours together in terms of what each person believes in. I would honestly challenge if any other school kind of brings in that diversity, because it's like a mini kind of Oxford in the business school. That's why I said that no one speaks about a particular career, or there's not much talk about one career. I think as a business school, we're quite liberal. We're open to each other's ideas. We're tolerant of each other's ideas and each other's values. And I think that was probably the biggest takeaway for me. For me personally, I've never lived outside the country. That was my first time outside of India. So even more so, I had to go in with an open mind. So I think that was definitely something which I got in my first few weeks.
Another thing, given that that's diversity, and there's another thing they value is outstanding leadership and contributions to the school. In that vein, there's something called Oxford Business Network, which is a completely student-run network of organizations, almost mini organizations within Oxford. You were part of the Social Impact Oxford Business Network. You were a coordinator of the Impact Investing Club there. You also, from what I can see on your LinkedIn, were a director of the Oxford Seed Fund. The seed fund that you spoke about that invested in early stage ventures, the ones that you spoke about a little earlier. Talk about the opportunities that Oxford presents, both from leading clubs as well as being in the entrepreneurship space or the venture capital space, like you've embarked upon.
Sure. I mean, going back to what I said earlier, a filter was clearly that does the business school or university have a student-led fund? So that checked off as well. Tons of opportunities. I think while the focus was to dive more into social entrepreneurship and impact investing, I think definitely kept myself open to other kind of avenues as well. But just in terms of practical opportunities, the OBNs essentially consider them as a form of student clubs, but for different interests. The social impact OBN has probably the highest membership following the private equity club or on par. So there's like equal interest in both finance and doing good. So you have that in one side. The student-run clubs, which tie in with the competitions and the conferences which happen throughout the year. And like I said, so that's one kind of gateway to all of that. But aside from that, in terms of folks who want to get into VC, so we have a really, really strong entrepreneurship center. And for social entrepreneurship, we have the Skoll Center for Entrepreneurship. So you have two centers. Then, of course, we have the PE center, then we have the one for real estate, and so on and so forth. But specifically for VC, I think the Oxford Seed Fund is probably the best opportunity that you can get within the business school. The Seed Fund, we have 11 team members, so each one of us are directors. There's no one director. And we essentially have £50,000 to invest in 2 companies every year. So you source about 100, 150 and whittle it down to over the period of the year. So in a sense, we are working while we're studying, and that you need to commit time to that as well. So conscious of that, if you also want to take part in other competitions for impact investing, you have a separate thing called MINT, which is the MBA Impact Investing Network and Training Program, which is hosted by Wharton and Bridges Fund Management. So I think me and one other guy, we're the only 2 people who are doing the Seed Fund and the MINT competition. So because it's only 1 year, you can only commit to so much. So that's why I keep saying you need to have clarity in terms of what you want to do during the year as well. Because the moment you step into Oxford, it's like Hogwarts, things are amazing, but one term gets over like that. So I think come in with your priorities straight, obviously be open to new kind of avenues. And outside of that, this is just a business school, the consulting club, there's a consulting OBN. Anyone wants to get into a McKinsey, BCG, Bain, they enroll in case competitions, they do mock-ups, and they're like training sessions. So yeah, I mean, it's probably whatever's there. I think it's difficult to kind of condense the kind of opportunities because that's just a business school. Beyond that, at the university level, you do have consulting clubs there as well. Several of the MBA students have gone on to hold leadership positions where they actually do real-life projects with them as well. So like I said, the business school has maybe 100 to offer. The university has maybe 200 opportunities to offer. And whatever sector it may be it private equity or venture capital, you have the faculty and the resource to kind of back that up. At the same time, you have avenues to where you can actually hone your skills. I'll just give you a quick example. One of my good friend, she comes from a design background. She was an architect before, and hopefully she gets to watch this at some point. She came in with the architecture background and she wanted to get into private equity. And I think she had some kind of real estate background. So she took all the finance courses, all the corporate finance, all the M&A and turnaround, all the private equity. And she probably knew better about finance than me because she had learned it fresh and probably had a very good sense of it. And I think after the MBA was done, she interned with a couple of funds and maybe, just being persistent. Now she's part of a real estate private equity fund. So just from someone who has no finance background, who has probably come from an entirely different world to getting into private equity, the school does offer that platform. But like I always say to any potential MBA applicant or prospective, anything falls on you to kind of, get the drive going forward. You need to, tap into those resources. You need to reach out to people. You need to, take that pressure of finding a career while you're in the MBA and think about where you want to go. I think that persistence and that perseverance is really what takes you to that place. And I know a lot of people who've done that. Even myself, I think the goal that I wrote in my essay was I wanted to be part of an impact investing organization which had like a certain amount of assets under management, looking at these sectors and these geographies. Of course, I am in India, but I did continue to be in the impact investing space. So I think just sticking to that goals, if you really kind of convinces that's where you want to be, the school does offer and the university does offer those resources. Aside from that, I think maybe one thing which we didn't speak about is the college system at Oxford in terms of what opportunities those offer. For anyone who doesn't know, University of Oxford and Cambridge University, probably the only two universities in the world which has a college system. We have about 38 colleges. The oldest one was probably built in 1200, so it's about 800 years old. And the idea is that the business school becomes your department, the university confers your degree and the examinations, and the colleges become your houses of residence and where you essentially meet students from other departments and kind of schools. So you probably meet someone who's studying politics, probably someone who's inventing the next quantum computer. So you don't just kind of move around with the business school students. And I know a lot of my friends who wanted to kind of take a break away from the business school and meet more people from the other departments as well. So really the sky's the limit when you're there. And in the time that you have, 12 months, you really need to start thinking in terms of where you want to be. So I think it's just a constant choice rather than having that luxury in terms of, okay, let me just take some time and think about it later.
Speaking of the 12 months, speaking of the fact that there are OBNs for, let's say, globally the more popular careers of traditional finance and consulting, let's talk about the challenges of recruiting in a one-year program. You obviously have no time by the time you get into classes, participating in a lot of activities like you have and going into competitions, impact investment competitions in Spain and Wharton. How does one manage recruiting when it's right around the corner?
Sure. Two things to this. If you're in a kind of a career path where the recruiting is more structured, as you probably agree with me, consulting or in investment banking, the moment you enter into business school, your applications are due. So you enter business school in late August, early September, and your applications are due by November, December for the first round. So for those who are already in the consulting space, great, they probably have an edge. But if you're new to the consulting space, it doesn't mean you don't have time. You just need to commit to it. So there's 3 months of hard work that you need to put through. And I know a lot of people who actually did that. Of course, there's a lot of pre-course kind of orientation materials that give you a sense in terms of what these timelines are. So the school definitely gives you a heads up in terms of which companies or firms are going to recruit at what time. But yes, it's definitely a challenge. But I think if you're prepared well enough, it shouldn't be a problem. I think my perspective is the lesser time you have, the more driven you are. I think if you're given maybe a lot of time, then you probably push things away. But when it's crunch time, you probably put the best of your resources and your efforts into kind of make that happen. But I think the other probably challenges, once again, for the more structured paths is that, or probably an advantage is, let's say you're not able to crack it this year, you can, by the time you come to next year, you're still eligible for the next cycle. So you're still in country. So if you're looking to work in London or in Oxford, so you can still, stick around and do that. But besides that, I think it's a lot of networking that you need to do in the first 3 months. So while, you are speaking to a lot of people, I think if you want to get onto the train a bit earlier, you need to start at least 6 months before you join school. So you already need to speak to the firms, let's say 6 months before. You need to tell them, I am joining school at this point, and, these are the offices that I'm looking to join in. Can we actually make that happen? So you need to be proactive. I know I did that. I know a lot of us did that, even for impact investing at the more non-traditional kind of or non-structured kind of timelines. So we were still doing that. I started speaking to firms same time, 6 months before the MBA started. I started reaching out to alumni even before. So I had a sense in terms of who was recruiting, who wasn't. And I think you need to be on your toes, think smart, network smart, and we can just kind of make it happen.
I'd say while a person gets an admit, the old adage of, oh, you've received an admit, enjoy your break, quit your job, enjoy your break, and then get into school and worry about it.
Yeah.
While that's nice and rosy, I tell people, get prepared for it. You want to get into consulting? Start working on your case preparation. It doesn't hurt to get your foundations of case right, so that you start working on the networking, so that you understand who's coming. Network with alumni from the school, like you suggested, so you know what companies are coming, how to get your bearings around how to do the networking when you're in school. Get the foundations of case interviewing, or in foundations of investment banking or private equity right, so that when you go there, you're already one step ahead. You're not flustered by the fact that you need to learn that, as well as participate in classes, as well as participate in clubs, lose track of things.
Absolutely. Let me just add something very quickly. If you do get an applicant to a business school, in my case, I wasn't just speaking to alumni from Said. I was speaking to alumni from LBS and from Judge. Because I think the approach I took was, which are the firms that I want to work for? Who's working there? Do they have a similar profile, or do I think that I will be in their position in a couple of years? So I think while the response from the alumni from Oxford is fantastic, I've never had a single alumni or alumnus turn me down or not help me. I think it's been equally kind of great to kind of connect with the folks outside of the business school as well. So I think I would say don't have a myopic approach just to speak to that university or the business school alone, because people are generally nice. I think they would like to help you if they can. But if there are a couple of firms where you want to work for or work at, I think just reaching out to those folks. And I'm guessing by this time, anyone who's watching this, if you've been doing this as long as Ashwin and I have, so you've already probably spoken to alumni from different business schools. So that's
hopefully,
as well.
Yeah.
So they also kind of help you and kind of put you in touch with folks who are working there. So yeah, I think that's important too.
One last thing as we wrap up your year at Oxford. I was looking at the career stats. Maybe this is a year old or 2 years old. 91% of the students within 3 years of graduation were placed, which is great as for any school. Surprisingly, there's a balance across industries that people have been placed in. It seems a bit skewed that Oxford's placement record says 40% in industry. The word industry is misleading. If you dig a little deeper, you'll see it's 20% in technology, 29% in finance, 22% in consulting. And then here's the surprising bit. And this is what you confirmed a week ago when we spoke. 22% in social impact and entrepreneurship.
Exactly.
Speak to what's so unique about social impact and entrepreneurship within Oxford that so many people actually venture into it.
So I think the business school and the university, it has so many programs that help students to actually come to business school. And these are through fellowships. The School Center provides something called, or at least the business school provides something called the School MBA. Essentially, if you're an entrepreneur, you can apply for that while you're applying for the MBA. And if you're shortlisted for that, I believe that's a full ride to the business school. So, and there are 5 scholars that are awarded every year. And these guys are entrepreneurs who founded social entrepreneurs in all over the world: India, Brazil, Mexico, whatever, Middle Eastern, Asia, or wherever that might be. So I think consciously the business school is supporting social entrepreneurs, or at least the spirit of social entrepreneurship. Because what they do is when they come into the business school, they work on a lot of things. They work on new entrepreneurial ideas. Obviously, they're working on their own venture. At the same time, they're also introducing a lot of these programs. In the last 2 years since I've graduated, there have been a lot of more practical kind of learning opportunities or engaging opportunities with industry professionals. There's something called Leading for Impact. There's a impact investing lab, which wasn't there when I was there. There's a specific impact investing module. There's a social finance module. There's a social impact lab. So if you take the MBA journey for a social entrepreneur or anyone who wants to get into social impact, there's 100 different points which you can touch in 1 year. So they do that. And outside of that, the university, of course, offers a lot of other fellowships. You have Rhodes Scholars, then you have the Whittenfield Hoffman Scholars. And of course, I think this goes to a lot of the candidates from the Commonwealth countries. So they all attend business school, go back to their ventures or start new ventures. And at the business school, I'll just give you an example of one of my favorite startups from my class. So she and her team, they created this venture, which was basically virtual. They were using virtual reality and augmented reality, the technology to treat dementia or Alzheimer's. I'm not sure which issue it was.
Wow.
And they already piloted the tech during the first term. They had the first paying customer within 6 months, and now they're like part of every tech accelerator in London. So yeah, I mean, I think just the business school and the university is like very conducive place if you want to be a social entrepreneur. And there's a lot of support, of course, through the academics, through the faculty. We have some amazing kind of faculty and professors who are in the space. My favorite professor is Mark Ventresca. I say that to everyone who I speak to. So he leads the innovation strategy and social innovation. And then there's Alex Nichols, who leads the social finance selective. And even outside of that, if you're like interested in collaborative economy, Rachel Botsman is there. She's like the guru for the whole space. So literally you can reach out to anyone. And yeah, I mean, I think if you want to be a social entrepreneur, if you want to just understand more what it's all about, there are like tons of opportunities that can essentially...
No school like Oxford for that then.
Yeah, and of course we have the school conference. Everyone who turns up there every year. Then even the university hosts a lot of social impact stuff. So I think there's that ethos that what you bring to the school, you take it out and create it in some form which actually helps people. That's really there. One more example. Another very good friend. She's the CEO of this firm called Bridges to Prosperity, and they basically literally build bridges for remote villages that don't have access, or if it takes, let's say, 2 hours to get to a place, they literally build a bridge, and that saves travel time or makes travel time like 10 minutes. So, and they're doing that with governments. They just closed one to the Rwandan government. So it's exciting. So I hope you understand in terms of what the pedigree of colleagues. So
yes, that's exactly what I feel. I have a 2-bit video operation with Admissions Roadmap, trying to imbibe my vision to help a lot of people, and there are people trying to cure Alzheimer's and dementia and create bridges. Thanks, man. I appreciate this. Look, is this exceptional? Before I wrap up, I wanted to save the best for the last.
Okay.
I wanted to save the innovation that I think you are responsible for, that we've seen many others follow. Talk about how you crowdfunded a part of your MBA cost. Let's talk through this whole thing for people who want to emulate this and what you did to make that crowdfunding successful.
Sure. Before I talk about that, I just need to tell you that I think we all can agree and kind of understand that, great, you've got the MBA admit, fantastic, it's the best day of your life, but then you're immediately wondering, how the hell do I actually raise that money to make it happen? So that's when reality starts kicking in. So I think the great thing is right now we have a lot of education financing companies. There's Prodigy Finance, hands down the best solution that is there for MBAs, especially for anyone who's looking at it. Hassle-free, and you get something, if not everything that you want. But I think the process for me was essentially I applied for a scholarship, which unfortunately fell through. That was for about £15,000 or roughly around $20,000, and I had figured out maybe 40% of the cost through Prodigy Finance, and so that was fine. And this was a shortfall, and the rest I brought in through savings and family support and all of that. But I think it quickly became clear to me that if I couldn't pull this through, I wasn't going to business school this year. And there's no time like today. And I wasn't going to defer my admission for another year or think about coming back to another year. So I was thinking, okay, I have all of these skill sets. I work in investment, I work in impact investment. So I'm essentially pitching or helping others pitch for their ideas. Why can't I commoditize myself or essentially make a product of myself? And now that it's a fairly prestigious university, the hypothesis I had was, if people knew where I was working and what I wanted to do after the MBA, then they would probably resonate with the fact that they would try to support me in some form. That was the hypothesis. But really, if you pull away all the niceties or how it feels awesome that you've actually raised it, it's a harrowing process. First, you need to break your own barriers because it's not difficult to ask people for money.
You need to break your ego for sure.
Exactly. So at that point, I think if you hold your pride, you're probably not going to get anywhere. So
No.
let's just say the whole process took me easily 2.5 months overall, from start to finish. I think the way I did it was essentially I prepared like a 2-page investment proposal for myself. One quick point: this was not an online crowdfunding campaign. I still didn't have courage to do that, but I still crowdfunding it in some form. I know a couple of people who are actually doing it online. They have a platform, so kudos to them. But yeah, so put together an investment proposal, and basically the pitch was that, see, this is the situation I've gotten this university. This is the sector I'm working for, and I really want to continue being in the sector. And this business school is going to help me achieve that. Can you help? That was it, nothing else. And initially, I think there was this assumption that there's a couple of things. I've written a post about this on LinkedIn for anyone who's looking.
I'll link that in the show notes of this video when I put the blog as well.
Sure. I think the big learning there was you should simply ask, and you really don't know where help might come from. So I think essentially went at it as a process. Reach out to your first degree connections first, see what the response is. Obviously, try to tap into your family and friends. Then reach out to maybe your professional contacts, and anyone else who you might know. Just don't feel ashamed in terms of doing that, because there's two ways to do this. One is you can ask for money without any obligations to pay back, or you can actually have some commitment to pay back at some point in time. That is also there. So really, I guess it depends on your comfort factor. So I did all of that, and I think there were tons of rejections. People really wanted to help but couldn't, and then there were people who had the ability but didn't want to. So you will kind of run into that as well. So I think it's a bittersweet process, but end of the day, if you stick to it, you do end up becoming victorious. So sleepless nights altogether, thinking, and at each goal. So your first $1,000, okay, then there's like $15,000 more to go, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. And there's something which I won't forget. A friend who I had not spoken to almost 10 years after high school, and I just thought, why not? Why not just ask him? And he turned out contributing 40% of my ask in one go. And that was simply, which I wasn't expecting at all. And instantly overnight, just jumped. And then as you achieve your smaller goals, your larger goals become more achievable. I think by the time I finished it, I was just grateful that the process got over, and everything was in place. But really, I think just a great kind of learning curve, and I think new respect for entrepreneurs, especially everyone who's raising money, millions and whatnot over several months. So you empathize for them. So definitely not in comparison this pales, but because you're looking to kind of be on your own feet, trying to finance your own education, I think you can definitely walk out a much more humble person. And when you get into business school, you do not have any airs that you've actually gotten into Oxford. You're just there as a person who actually wants to learn, and that's pretty much it.
You strip naked of your pride and ego in the process you've gone through, and now you're willing to take in anything else that comes as well. For anybody that wants to learn how to crowdfund your part of your MBA, as many have reached out to you over the last years, please reach out to Giant. I want to wrap up with one thing.
Sure.
What, if anything, do you want to teach future Indian applicants, future emerging markets applicants, that they should do in order to successfully replicate your path to getting into business school?
Sure. Straight off the bat, I think common kind of observation I had, I think with Indians, and pardon me if this is a sweeping generalization, I think there's some lethargy in terms of getting things done. We take things for granted, and you can agree or disagree with me. I think from where we come from in terms of our traditional values, things are given to us on a platter, right? So when you're an undergraduate, if you're studying in any of the universities in India, you talk about placements, meaning you expect the university to actually find you a job. But when you go outside, you actually realize that's not how it works at all.
No.
And then it becomes recruitment and whatnot. So I think one observation I had is people should probably put themselves out more. I think interpersonal skills. I think that's something which I've seen. How do you kind of speak to I think just building the confidence to reach out to C-suite executives. I think after a point, and quick example, I was in San Francisco for a conference, and I wanted to meet a couple of firms. If the 20-year-old me were there, I probably would not have had the courage to do that at all. But I think at that point, you email the CEO directly, ask for a coffee chat, and then, he or she simply responds. But you need to go out there. You need to put yourself out there, regardless of whatever position you might be in. Like goes back to what I was speaking about earlier. Do not have any airs in terms of where you are right now. You might be the best university in the world, but you are still learning. I don't think there's any kind of full stop in terms of where you want to go. I think just that humility and also being more excited and being more front-footed in terms of where you want to be. I think that lethargy is something that I've seen. We expect things to come to us. We expect people to come to us. And very rarely, and probably I've seen this only with Indians who've actually lived abroad or lived outside the country and understand how that culture works. So that's probably one thing. The second thing, I guess, is just being frugal, just being smart with the frugal resources you have. I guess the financing bit, which I spoke about, is a clear example. I think if you are willing to kind of think about solutions, you can practically get anything you want. I think the moment you accept defeat on face value, then I guess the point of doing the MBA is defeated. I think the kind of people, even the universities and the business schools want are problem solvers. I guess it isn't enough if you just solve problems on GMAT. You actually need to solve problems in real life.
In real life.
So yeah, and I guess that's really where the differentiation is. I think they want to see people who've been there and done that. I'm not an entrepreneur, but I do like to think that I have an entrepreneurial spirit. That kind of gets you to where you want. You need to be hungry for what you want, and that gets you from one place to the other. I know hustle is probably like a widely thrown around word, but just be curious. Just try to learn what the other person has to say. Be open to like new ideas. That's something which we as not Indians, anyone should do and go to, because that's 1 year or 2 years that you've kind of committed to. And if you're not going to use that opportunity to become a better version, and I remember something which I told my family is that when I come back after 12 months or whatever that is, if you do not see a difference in me, then it means I've not learned.
It's a wasted opportunity.
That's what I told them. And that much, I think that's pretty clear. So yeah, I think just consciously having an anchor that when I'm in the business school, yes, have fun, travel, make friends and do all of that, but consciously evaluate yourself on a daily basis and see if you're actually getting where you want to be.
It's been incredible. I appreciate the time. This has been an interview 1 year in the making. Many stops, many starts, many technical difficulties, but we finally got through. Thanks so much, Jayanth, for doing this. For anybody that wants to reach out and understand how to get into Oxford, how to innovate, how to try, how to do differently to fundraise your education, or how to get into impact investing, I'm going to point them to you. Please reach out to Jayanth on LinkedIn. In the show notes, I'll put the article that you've written as well. I appreciate your time in doing this, and I appreciate your time in helping other Indians get into business school. Thanks so much, too.
Thank you. I mean, you're doing this for like God knows how long, and you've been doing this back to back. And as I understand it, your weekend is pretty full as well. So yeah, I guess we just need more people like you to kind of make things happen. We do have the potential. We just need to polish the edges to become.
Let's keep doing it, man. All right. Bye, everybody.